Good evening and welcome to the Candidates Forum. My name is Shannon Taylor and I will serve as tonight's moderator. This forum is sponsored by the Delta County League of Women Voters and the American Association of University Women. The League of Women Voters is providing this forum as an opportunity for candidates to express their views related to their candidacy. Statements expressed by the candidates are not endorsed nor opposed by the League of Women Voters or the American Association of University Women. Also, the League of Women Voters does not certify any candidate responses to questions as accurate. Voters are encouraged to fact-check information shared at the forum. If a candidate is unopposed, we do not cover that race. Examples are the 1st and 5th County Commissioner districts this year. District 2 did not have enough candidates commit to the forum. The League has an empty chair policy. When one or more candidates for the office is on the ballot and only one candidate chooses to attend the League of Women Voters Forum, then no candidate for that office will be permitted to appear. Empty chair forums may not be held. We do this to avoid the appearance of favoritism by the league, the broadcaster, and the hosting facility to any candidate. Tonight's forum will be in 4 segments. The first segment is for the Delta County Commissioner districts. The term is for 2 years. The second segment will cover the 2 candidates for prosecuting attorney. The term is 4 years. The third segment will cover candidates for the Michigan House of Representatives, the 108th district. The term is also for 2 years. And finally, the last segment will cover candidates for the Michigan State Senate, the 38th district. This term is also for 4 years. I will now introduce the candidates for the county commissioner districts and explain the specific rules of the forum. We welcome the candidates and thank you for participating. We will go in alphabetical order. They will make their 1-minute opening statements, followed by responses to audience questions. The responses are also 1 minute. It will be a rotating response order. Each candidate will be given 1 minute to respond to each of the questions asked. A beep will sound when your 60 seconds are up, and the timer will also hold up a red card when your time has elapsed. Please refer to the timer in the front row. Then the question will go to the next candidate. The forum will end with each candidate giving a 1-minute closing statement. During this forum, candidates are asked to respond only to the questions asked by the moderator. Please be respectful of other candidates. Active debate with other candidates is not allowed. A parliamentarian will be present to ensure that the rules are followed. A warning will be given the first time. If there is a second infraction, the candidate will be asked to leave. You are, however, free to address any appropriate issues during your opening and closing remarks. Audience members are free to submit as many questions as they would like. As many questions as time permits will be read and answered. Now, if our candidates have no questions, we will proceed with opening statements. Candidate Bob Barron, we welcome you. You have the floor for 1 minute, beginning now.
Thank you. It's good to be here. My statement here is I'm from the area originally. I actually have been in the area, a lifetime resident. I live out in the Flat Rock area. My wife and I live out there. We're farmers out in that area. We've been there farmers for a long time. The family is originally from the Barron side is from the Montreal, Quebec area, as we always called it as kids, and been here over 150 years. On my mother's side, her family came from Belgium about 100 years ago. She was second generation New Country. I'm third, so I have a lot of fond memories of that and tied in. Also, my wife and I have 3 children, 3 sons, and we're expectant grandparents for our first grandchild here in December, so we're pretty excited. As a board member, I've been a board member of, I was Bay College trustee for 31 years, been on numerous other boards over those years. And I'd like to be back in this position as a county commissioner now. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Teresa Nelson, welcome. You have the floor for 1 minute, beginning now.
Thank you, Shannon. Thank you to the League of Women Voters who set this up. I know it's a lot of work. And to all the people that are here tonight, taking the time out, come out, and it's not really nice weather out there either. So thank you for that. I have retired 6 years ago, it was this year. I retired at 65 from the Community Action Agency after working there for 33 years. I was over at the Senior Center first, at the Civic Center, for those of you that know that. And then I left there and I went down to Community Action Agency's administrative office, where I developed and ran the Retired and Senior Volunteer Program. It's for people 55 and over to volunteer in their communities. With that, I had a lot of spin-off programs. If you have children in Gladstone, I started the Reading Buddies program over there, and it's still going, so that tells you how good that was. I have been a commissioner for 5 years. There are still things on my list that I would like to be able to accomplish as a commissioner. I do attend the meetings here at City Hall, so it seems very funny for me to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Turning now to District 4. Candidate Dave Moyle, welcome. You have the floor for 1 minute, beginning now.
I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for sponsoring tonight's forum and for your service. My name is Dave Moyle. I'm a lifelong resident of Delta County. I've run my own business on Escadamus Main Street for 25 years. For the last 12 years, I've been your county commissioner in District Number 4, and I'm very proud of the accomplishments that I've helped achieve for this county, whether it's the Child Advocacy Center or making sure that our police stay funded, whether it's a full-time veteran services officer that the commission that I served on hired, bringing over $60 million into this area, getting our veterans what they need. I'm extremely proud of being able to serve the public that way. We're heading into 10% inflation, and I don't feel that my work for the county is done. So on November the 8th, I'm asking for your support because it's going to be more expensive now to run a county than ever before. Everything we do is more expensive, from the gas that we pay for our patrol cars to heating our buildings. You need the people with the experience not to get in your pocket, but how to live within the means of Delta County. That's how we're going to move this county in the right direction during some hard times, and I thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Kelly Vangenhoven, welcome. You have the floor for 1 minute, beginning now.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming tonight. My name is Kelly Vangenhoven. I am your no party affiliation candidate for Delta County Commissioner District 4, which is the city of Escanaba precincts 1 and 3. I am a wife, a mother, a small business owner on Ludington Street, and an active community volunteer. I have lived in Delta County nearly my entire life. Those closest to me, I have used the words tenacious, hardworking, understanding, collaborative, and kind to describe my character. I am committed to moving our Delta County forward together if elected. When I decided to run for county commissioner, I knew it had to be a no-party affiliated ticket. I wanted to be one of the first people who made a valiant and true attempt to put partisan politics aside and do what is best for all residents of this county, not just a portion. I believe we are more alike than we are different, and I also believe the decisions made at the county level have little or nothing to do with a national political party. I'm ready to bridge the divides that both the major political parties have created in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes opening statements. We will now proceed with questions submitted from the audience. Since the opening statement began with candidate Barron, we will now move on to candidate Nelson to answer the first audience question. Candidate Nelson, what would your top 3 priorities as county commissioner be?
My top 3 priorities, and I have those down. I really want to see them happen. First of all is our jail property, which I'm sure you're very familiar with over here, the old jail, has to come down, and Jared from the Terrace is ready and willing to take her down. So we need to see that happen. Tyler Dubort's right in front here. He sits on the city council. They have worked very hard to bring 3 entrepreneurs from the city of Escanaba, the Terrace, Kabasic, Marine out here, and also I don't see Beth and Matt Sweelan here. Usually they would be here too. The 3 of them are coming in together, and I think it's wonderful that we have captured 3 people locally and retained them here to go ahead, take out that jail, get rid of it. He's bringing in a motel with a restaurant. Basic Marine is moving down further, taking more property there. And then on the other side with the chamber is Matt and Beth Sweelan, and they're putting up North Shore Flats. So if you haven't paid attention to lofts on Ludington Street, thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Moyle?
My top 3 goals for the county. Number 1, pay-as-you-go government. The government needs to stay out of your pocket, and you can decide how you best spend the money that you earn. We must live within our means, so you don't spend savings on the day-to-day operations of the county government. It needs to be run like a business. Number 2 is attracting manufacturing. People aren't going to open up in Delta County because they want to be nice. They're going to come up here to open up because we got a great quality of life and simply because they can make a profit. So we need to offer very aggressive, targeted tax breaks to entice corporations to come here. When we do that, if they're the right kind of corporations, we can have a career path payment for our young people who would no longer be our greatest export. They'd stay in the UP. People come back to the UP after working for a while because they love the area. Third one is making sure that Upset stays funded completely. We need to maintain staying there fiduciary. 90% of the crime in Delta County is drug associated or has something to do with drugs. You cannot consider reducing their payments. We have to continue funding Backing Our Blue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Candidate Vangenhoven?
In my opinion, the top three issues facing Delta County at this time are the mental health and drug cases in our county jail, the lack of proper veteran service office staffing, and the maintenance of a successful Delta County airport. What I found out from our Escanaba Public Safety Director and our Sheriff's Department is that approximately 85% of our county jail population has mental health or drug problems, and that costs our county a lot more money than just a normal incarcerated population. So we need to figure out how to downplay those not downplay those issues, but downgrade those issues. It's going to be a very long process. Our local veteran service office is currently severely understaffed. We have one full-time employee right now, where other areas and other counties in the UP have more than one. So I'm going to try to work with a collaborative effort with our administration and fellow commissioners to try and expand that veteran service office. And then third, becoming a hub for the UP for the Delta County Airport is going to be my goal.
Thank you. Candidate Barron?
Three top issues. My preference is not to give three top issues because of most of your issues that come before the county board that I've seen in the last 2 years. I'm going to concentrate on one, and one of them has been that we've had a huge turnover in county personnel, and that needs something that has to be addressed and taken care of, because these issues of that tie into so many other issues. The drug issue, you have a lot of stress in our jail situation and our officers that are involved in this. It gets to be a rough situation. These different issues tie together in many different points. So I would look at that. Well, we're already looking at that as far as this turnover and being able to address it, but it's a whole lot of other problems. You've got mental health issues tied in with that, the drug issue, and they all have to be addressed to solve these problems, not just specific three. They're all tied together.
Thank you. Candidate Moyle, if elected, how will you role model professionalism and respect for the ideas and beliefs of others and take an active stand against political bullying?
Let me be clear on this. There's a difference between civility and sincerity. If you look at our founding fathers, they were civil up to a point where they feel like their rights had been trampled on. Then they drew a hard line in the sand and they defended it. Otherwise, we'd still be British subjects right now. So as an elected official, I believe that sometimes you have to make unpopular decisions, and you are the only person voting on a subject that you think in the affirmative that is the best for the county. I don't think it's a commissioner's job to role model civility, because the oath of office, which I've taken 6 times, talks specifically about protecting and upholding the Constitution of the United States. The issue of bullying, you just have to be respectful and kind to people, because if this country does not get back to being able to disagree agreeably, we will become a third world nation. It used to be Republicans and Democrats could go attack each other on the House floor. They'd go have a beer under Tip O'Neill, and they'd leave their issues on the House floor. We need to get back to that. We are all Americans.
Thank you. Candidate Vangenhoven?
I believe a successful Delta County will take strong leadership, open and honest conversations with diverse opinions, but trust and confidence in your commissioners is first and foremost. As an independent candidate, I'm going to try to bridge any divides within the commission and within our county. We're all citizens of the same county. We all want it to be successful. We must remember that as people, we are more alike than we are different, and together we can do so much more than if we're divided. Leadership is the art of motivating a group of people to act towards achieving a common goal, and I look forward to that opportunity as your next commissioner.
Thank you. Candidate Barron?
Could you repeat the question, please?
If elected, how will you role model professionalism and respect for the ideas and beliefs of others and take an active stand against political bullying?
How would I do that? Well, I've already been doing that, and I would continue to do that. But I do have a set of core beliefs that are based on absolutes, which are based on the only source of it, which is the Word of God. And I have learned and learned to follow those through studying the King James Bible, which is the Bible used to write the Declaration of Independence. and the Constitution. This issue about bullying, that's quite often is something that is a moving target. One's thought about bullying versus another one people are offended by the asking questions nowadays, and that's not a form of bullying, but it's been thrown forth as that, and I've experienced that in this position that I'm in now. So that's how I would approach it from the basic foundation of this nation. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Nelson?
Well, if you watch the county commissioners meeting, if you come in on Zoom or if you participate, you know that we haven't been very kind to each other lately, and it's been really rough to the point that after our first meeting in September 20th meeting is when it was. A lot came out at that meeting. There were a lot of people in the room. As COVID kind of settles down, a lot more people are starting to come back to the meetings, except for last night. It was very quiet. But after that meeting, I went home and thought about it, and I tried calling the sheriff at Oswald, and he was out of town. But I did get Phil Grebo, the undersheriff, and I believe that we need to have the presence of security in that building. What's going on during our meetings should never be happening. It's totally, it's just out of control. And I was very thankful to Mr. Grebo last night for the undersheriff to be at that meeting, except I was kind of embarrassed because it was very quiet. There were only 11 people in the room, and the meeting, the agenda carried well, and we did okay. But as you know, in the past, we've really had some problems, and the sheriff needed to be brought in. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Vangenhoven, if the county was given $1 million to do whatever they wanted with it, what would your recommendations be?
I would focus on expanding our Veterans Service Office. I believe that needs to be our top priority at this time. I also believe in helping our county's homeless population, so that would be an excellent investment as well. Thirdly, I would like to see the movement of the county building over by the service center.
Thank you. Candidate Barron?
Well, the county has been given $7 million under the ARP, or the American Rescue Plan. I don't really care for that designation. I've called it the Fauci flu fiasco funds, but we have that amount of money sitting there. Your $1 million is something that you're putting forth here, but the $1 million, I question where it came from to begin with. We're given this if it's by the government giving it, it means it had to take it from someone, from the taxpayers. That concerns me, because whatever's taken from that the government takes from us is not available for us to use ourselves as citizens. And the citizens have a far better track record of using their money. So that's where I would look at it.
Thank you. Candidate Nelson?
Is everybody here familiar with fire numbers? If you live in the city of Escanaba, you have an address. If you live in a township, you have a fire number. Currently, at this time, there are 14 townships in Delta County. 4 townships are completed. We have 10 that are not. So when the police get called or the ambulance gets called out, they cannot find your home because the numbers are not correct. And they just finished doing Cornell. They had to change street numbers, street names, put the numbers in. We need funding for that. Supervisor Johnson from Bark River, Craig Johnson, and myself have been working on this for 5 years. I know the Senator McBroom's in here somewhere, but we raised $180,000. We're up to $160 is what we're looking for, and I would like to leave a gentle reminder with him. We are still looking for that $160,000. Help us to finish this. If we had $1 million, we could get her done. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Moyle?
Well, if inflation keeps going, with $1 million, we could buy some erasers and light bulbs. That's obviously a joke. Mr. Barron stole my thunder on the $7 million from ARP. If $1 million, and Emily DeSalvo, our administrator, just wrote a grant for $830,000, so she came very close to $1 million. God bless her. If I had $1 million to give, it would be to the mental health system, because they are a forgotten army of souls that have nowhere else to turn. And state mental health hospitals have been shut down. They get absorbed into the prison systems, well, they've been pushed back to the counties. This is so big that we can't handle it by ourselves as a county. It's going to have to be a consortium of counties. I would find a way to dedicate that money to pathways and reaching the population of people that have no one to fend for them. And every day they're out trying to do what they can to get through, and whether that was through a substance abuse program for drugs and alcohol, to just mental health services expanding pathways' role in the community, they've had their funding eviscerated. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Barron, given recent economic trends, should any part of the county budget be shielded from cuts? If so, which area?
Well, the recent economic trends, we have some economic headwinds pushing against us. It's obvious are we in a recession, are we not in a recession? When you're having that discussion, you're already in it. So it's a question of how the revenue from the different sources that we have holds up under all this. We have a lot of coasting taking place because of these additional funds that were put in under the COVID situation that we had. I don't see cutting departments. I think going through the departments and doing the best of our ability to prioritize what needs to be done in those departments have heads, and if we have a situation where we have a shortfall, then the departments themselves would be coming forth with their recommendations. So knowing what particular part of a department is not really something that I would be able to say, because I'm not running that department, but I would be one making a decision.
Thank you. Candidate Nelson?
I know that Jody Norman, for those of you that don't know, he manages the road commission. He is having 2 people retire. He is not replacing those positions. He already knows what's coming down. He's really starting to watch that. And I think if we can go out and raise the funds ourselves, as Mr. Johnson and I are trying to for these signs, to cover the cost, if we can get different people supporting us, if we bring in the companies that will support us and give money to us, I think we need to look elsewhere other than that budget to cut. I don't believe in cutting a position. I think we should be able to challenge that and try to raise the money elsewhere, someplace, somehow to do it. At least try.
Thank you. Candidate Moyle?
I understand your question. It's what would you not want to cut out of the budget, and I would approach answering that by this. There are ways that a county can increase its revenue stream so you do not have to cut back on a budget, leaving the vets whole, leaving law enforcement whole, whatever services that we offer. You increase tourism and manufacturing. That's how we make our revenue streams increase. That will bring money in, desperately needed money in on all different areas. How you get, again, you're going to get sick of me saying this, manufacturing is based on getting corporations to open up in this county because they can make a profit. But we have grown our taxable base without turning to the public and said, we need money from you. We did it with the wind farms in Garden. We'll do it with the solar utility farms. As we increase our taxable infrastructure, the county increases its money without slapping it to the little guy. And so you have to think outside of the box, be reflective and not reactive, and we can live within our means and still be successful without having to cut departments or services. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Vangenhoven?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Sure. Given recent economic trends, should any part of the county budget be shielded from cuts? If so, which area?
If anything should be shielded from budget cuts, I believe it would be the sheriff's office and jail. Having sat on several boards in the past, budgets were always our #1 priority, and ensuring a balanced budget should be the #1 role of a county commissioner. Keep in mind that if taxes were to increase, that would only happen because a millage would be proposed. No commissioners can try and request or demand a tax increase from you, the citizens. Our county budget is in good shape. I do sit in on the financial committee subcommittee meetings. I believe that Administrator DeSalvo is doing an excellent job working on a new 3-year plan for our county. I look forward to working with her in the future, if elected, to make sure that budget cuts are not necessary. However, with inflation, we are in a very uncertain time, and hopefully we won't have to cut anything. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Nelson. Considering the importance of the information exchange in meetings and the budgetary oversight commissioners are ultimately responsible for within the county, how important is it for the commissioners to attend their board meetings and committee appointments?
Oh, I think it's very important. If you look at my record, I sit here today and I feel bad because I missed 3 city council meetings in a row. One was the Hope at the Inn on a Thursday, the next was the Community Foundation, and then last week it was UpCap's conference, and that was Thursday evening and Friday. Those are my 3 reasons why I wasn't there. I attend all my committee meetings. You can check my record for that. I'd be happy. You need to know what's going on out there. If you're not out there and listening and working with those people, you don't know what's happening there. That's very important to your position, to be out there and know what's going on and what those people want from you. You need to do that. And I'm sure as you listen to our other people that are coming up here tonight, they want to make every meeting they possibly can. That's the only way you can learn what you people want from us.
Thank you. Candidate Moyle?
Well, I think it's important to attend these meetings, but the thing that you need to know is they are advisory meetings. They exist to offer the full county board advice. And so after 12 years of service, I've learned that, because I work for a living and sometimes these meetings are during the day, I'll miss meetings. Staying informed is as easy as getting on Nextcloud. You can make a phone call. I've never had a problem staying informed. So it's important to go to these meetings, but they are advisory meetings. They're not compulsory. And you can tell by the way somebody votes. Here's what you might not know, is that in addition to our monthly wage, we get a per diem for going to these meetings of $20, $35, or $50, based on the length, and IRS gas to and from. Some people bill the county $1,000 to $1,200 a month in addition to their wage. I'm not going to go to meetings so I can send you, the taxpayer, a bill, because I can stay informed very easily. I've proven it with my record, okay? You don't get money to go in and out of from work. We've all asked to be up here. That's on us. I want to take a motion to severely limit per diem or get rid of it altogether. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Vangenhoven?
Since declaring my intent to run for county commissioner, I have made a valiant effort to attend as many county commission meetings as I possibly can, and committee and subcommittee meetings, including finance, personnel, road commission, planning commission. I also frequently attend Escanaba City Council meetings because that would be my district. I've been to the airport board since declaring to run, and I do this all on a volunteer basis so I can learn and educate myself within the county workings before I'm elected. I don't want to get up to the table and not know what's going on in the county. I find it very important. I also find that most of the decisions that are made and brought forth to the county commission are made at the smaller board level. Sitting in to the most recent airport board meeting where we spoke with the SkyWest representative, that's not something you can get in an email afterwards. That's something that you need to be there to attend, and I gladly do it voluntarily.
Thank you. Candidate Barron?
As far as attending meetings, that's continuity that you like to have is to see what's going on. There's always much to be learned from those. But your basic duties of a board, Board of Governance that the county commission is to write good policy, hire good people, and monitor performance. And that takes knowing what's going on in the community and what's needed. But also it is to realize that being informed does not mean that we would go forward and we get past those 3 points of writing good policy, hiring good people, and monitoring performance. It is to make sure that we don't interfere or micromanage what's going on. It's something that is very important from a board standpoint, and sometimes you can get caught up in undue influence from others. And I enjoy getting the information, but I do have to make a decision as a board member. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Moyle? Should zoning be the responsibility of the county or the townships? Why or why not?
Well, I am the commissioner that motioned to get the county out of zoning. If you look at the zoning issue, 75% of the county pays for its own zoning. Escanaba, Gladstone municipalities, Ford River, Bark River. 25% of the population of the county, or roughly 10 townships, need the county for that. And I have no problem with staying with zoning as long as the people that require it, pick up the full bill for the zoning. Because right now, my constituents in Escanaba are already paying for their zoning, so they really shouldn't have to pay for it twice. So we've had some committee of the whole meetings. We brought up Wexford County, and there's kind of a zoning township association down there. I'm all for that. We can help bring the townships together. We haven't pulled the rug out from under them. If we stay in zoning, it's going to be based on their desire to do it, but then hypothetically 10 or 9 townships would have to cover the costs of that. That's not pulling the rug out from, that's just being fair, okay? So I have no objection staying with zoning as long as we don't have ordinances on the books that we cannot enforce, because as a county, we can't enforce stuff for the city, Gladstone or Escanaba. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Vangenhoven?
Thank you. Recently, I drove to Rapid River to attend the Township Association meeting where I was able to sit in and listen to the township representatives and their concerns regarding the zoning changes. Zoning is going to be an ongoing issue. It's not something that's going to be settled in a month or two. It could take a year and a half up to 2 years. I believe if a township wants to control their own zoning, they should be encouraged to do so. However, if a township does not have the ability to handle zoning on their own, they should be able to rely on the county to provide this for them, but understanding that the fiscal responsibility is going to be on the township. Now, the more townships that want Delta County Commission to handle their zoning, the less pricey it's going to be. Right now, it seems like there's a lot up in the air. There's going to be another meeting at the end of the month, I believe, and then it will be a continued process. But as for right now, we're looking like a year and a half to 2 years out.
Thank you. Candidate Barron?
Yes, the zoning issue came up as part of our regular business, and it's been an issue that's been before. This was something that was kicked down the road from the 2006 board, and it needs to be addressed. Zoning out in the county, which the zoning ordinance that the county has, was implemented in 1976. It was implemented by the county board, and it was put forth to the townships in 2 ways. They had to have zoning, and it had to be, either they could do it themselves or the county would do it. But it's mandated because of the ordinance. The removal of the county being from the zoning is to remove the zoning ordinance. Therefore, the townships have the opportunity to decide if they want zoning or not. Right now, they're under mandate from the County Board of Commissioners with the zoning ordinance. Also, in Michigan, you have 83 counties. Only 21 do anything with zoning. It's been something because the counties don't have the power that the townships or cities do in zoning.
Thank you. Candidate Nelson?
Yes, the meeting that Kelly's referring to, it's called the Committee of the Whole. It is Friday, October 28th at 9 o'clock at the Service Center. I invite you all to attend. It's a learning experience. We are also getting help with the zoning issue from Michigan State University Extension. Brad is right on Zoom from Marquette. He's right there. He's made a commitment to help us with this. And also QPAD, who is right in the same building as the Service Center. I am very concerned about this. Be very careful with this. We have some very small townships that those people cannot do the zoning by themselves. If they're a township supervisor, they're hanging on by a thread already. They don't have the funding, they don't have the staff. We're looking for volunteers for these people to man these volunteer positions out in the townships. We aren't getting any responses. Nobody's breaking the door down to come and help them. So we need to very gently and carefully, slowly go through this session that we're going through and see what happens on Friday, October 28th at 9 o'clock at the Service Center for the Committee of the Whole. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Vangenhoven? If an increase in manufacturing is a goal, how would you house these new workers, considering the current lack of housing options?
Housing is definitely an issue in our county. Right now, I believe that we are making good headway and good progress with the redevelopment of the jail property here. The Civilians are going to be working on mixed use with retail and housing, a condo structure. I believe that drawing in groups like we had prior with the prior city council to build medium income to higher end housing is also definitely a priority in our county. But yes, right now it is a struggle.
Thank you. Candidate Barron?
Well, we talked about manufacturing, and it's been mentioned a couple of times, and housing. We have a potential project in the Bayview area for condominiums. It's in need of water and sewer in that area so that these projects could go forward. They're looking at 100 condos, potentially going to 800 for that housing income zone that we're in need of. It's the upper income level has fine for housing. The low income housing is well taken care of. It's in the middle there where that issue is, and that's what this would greatly go to solve that. It would be helpful in attracting the manufacturing, but we have other jobs that would be attracted because of that. Because in itself, if you have 100 to 800 condos would come into one area, they will build them a number of jobs in themselves just to take care of that. So, thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Nelson?
I'm very concerned about housing in this area, and I did bring up before about just right here with the jail property and what the Sweelens are going to do with the apartments and condos in there. But I'm also very worried about the Hope at the Inn housing. These are your neighbors and people that live right here in Delta County and don't have a place to go this winter. What are you thinking of? When you turn your thermostats, go to bed with either a heating blanket on, a hot pad, your warm comforters. I'm very concerned that more people and churches have not come forward to help with the Hope at the Inn. They are only funded, or they're going to try to do this, December 4th through sometime in February? What happens to you in February? Do you go outside and sleep in February in Delta County? We need to work on this issue now. Now is the time. We've waited too long already. We need to have people come forward to volunteer for the Hope at the Inn and for the churches and your prayer groups to get together and see what you can do to help these people. Are you aware that Hope at the Inn is only housing from December 4th to sometime in February? Think about the rest of the winter. Thank you. Think.
Thank you. Candidate Moyle?
As I understand this question, if manufacturing comes to Delta County, we'll have an extra need for housing beyond what we have now. My 12 years of serving you of experience has told me that if we get manufacturing to come in, it's not going to come in all at once. You know, it'll be a gradual thing, and we can rise to the challenge gradually with an increased economy that booms or increases through manufacturing. I think you're going to have more people stepping up to the plate in terms of whether it's developing new housing. Need will justify action. And so if we bring in some manufacturing, and let's plan on doing that, we will rise to the needs based on the economy flourishing in this community. And so the need is there, not just low income, but middle income housing, absolutely. It depends on the size of the manufacturing, but the county is willing to partner with anybody to help that and facilitate that. So will your municipalities. I mean, it's a win-win.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Candidate Barron, what do you think is the most effective way to operate, maintain, and improve our county parks?
Most effective way, 12 years ago, the County Board of Commissioners at that time asked the Soil Conservation District to see what they can do with the parks. They were in poor condition, they weren't a place of destination. We fast forward 12 years, the county parks are now beautiful parks. They're highly regarded, and they are a place of destination. The county board has just renewed a contract with the Soil Conservation District for another 10 years to run those parks, and it's a long-term plan that they're putting forth. We're going to be getting a full report of that board here, so we have a full history of it. The county forest is part of, actually, the parks and forests with Soil Conservation takes care of. These things are all tied together. And unfortunately, we don't have. Oh, excuse me. I didn't hit the button. Hopefully, it heard me. But thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Nelson?
Well, I guess I'm a regalian here because I am not in favor of the 10-year contract, and I voted no on that. I don't think anybody's giving anybody a 10-year contract in this day and age. I can't imagine that. And we had some problems out at Fuller. We had problems on Pioneer Trail. It is not the staff. They have done everything they possibly could. But we have people who are here in the audience tonight that want to use Fuller Park as a daytime use park. And that was really quite to get all that together and get those people so that they are taxpayers here. They have the right to use that park. You don't have to be a camper to get in there. They don't have a trailer. They don't have tents. They want to use Fuller Park. They have the right to do that. And I am not happy with this 10-year contract. Maybe if there's a change, some of us will be there, some of us won't, that we can get that 10-year contract changed. I don't believe we should leave that there, and I believe we should be looking elsewhere other than the Conservation Department for those parks. And they know how I feel.
Thank you. Candidate Moyle?
You simply have to look at the condition of the parks in 2010 to right now. I was on the board 2010 when we asked the Conservation District to run the parks for us. What was broken is now a destination that brings in desperately needed tax dollars and dollars to Delta County. The parks have always been available to the people because they are the people's parks. There are some rules that govern the way they're used, and nobody knew about a DNR trust fund grant. We're negotiating with the DNR, and I dare say that the people who want to do day use activity out at O.B. Fuller Park are going to be pleased because we're going to make sure that we accommodate the language in that grant. We still have more infrastructure repairs to do at both Pioneer and Fuller, but make no bones about it, these are your parks. There are rules to everything that the people own, but we have taken a broken wheel and turned it into a destination at very little cost to the people. And I respectfully disagree on the contract because the language in the contract, either party can terminate that within a very short amount of time. But if you could lock in the price of food now compared to 10 years, you'd lock it in, I think.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Candidate Vangenhoven?
Well, first off, I would like to say I think the Conservation District has done a good job with our county parks. My husband and myself enjoyed camping both at Pioneer Trail Park and Fuller Park this summer. They're operated and maintained well. I do have concerns. Through all of my experiences, I have never seen a 10-year contract given in any circumstance to any entity with no competing bids requested. As a county, we don't know if anyone could have done it better for a less cost, and I'd like to see the options presented if possible. The day use at O.B. Fuller is an issue that is being resolved. In my opinion, there should have been some documentation in place to ensure the end of day use never happened. If this documentation exists and was ignored, someone does need to be held accountable. So I would like to know the truth about how this happened, and it was wrong to take that right away from the taxpayers to use this park. Working with the county administration, my fellow county commissioners and others will be essential for continued success of our parks.
Thank you. Candidate Nelson? Do you feel that the county board has sufficient policies and procedures in place to help avoid issues related to conflict of interest?
No, I do not. And you would know that I would say that. I was the one that, through Bart Stupek, our former congressman, I met him at Walgreens, and he told me to go ahead to the Attorney General. It was time to do that, and I did. And we did hear back from the Attorney General. We received an email on conflict of interest with the definition in the state of Michigan. I definitely found that that was a conflict of interest, what was going on with our meetings. I know it was a split vote. It was a 2-3. We lost. But I still say it's a conflict of interest. And as we move on with everyday meetings, it still is a conflict of interest. You people need to pay attention to what's going on at those meetings, and you will find the conflict of interest is right there. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Moyle?
Well, I think the Constitution would be the arbitrator there who really determines what's a conflict of interest. The people will inevitably be the judge because you are the power holders. And if you're not caring for the way a commissioner does his or her job, the public giveth and they will taketh. I do not see a conflict of interest all the time. I think we have to be aware of things, but I also think something like that can be weaponized. So suspending somebody's constitutional rights on their land use is a very serious thing. And I think there can be conflict of interest that exist all over the place. But like I just said, politically it can be used as a stick to clobber somebody, and then they have to try to rid themselves of a stigma that they didn't deserve in the first place. So I would walk very softly and carry a big stick regarding this issue.
Thank you. Candidate Vangenhoven?
Could you repeat the question, please?
Sure. Do you feel the county board has sufficient policies and procedures in place to avoid issues related to conflict of interest?
I have to honestly say I'm not aware of their procedures regarding conflict of interest. Being the only candidate up here who does not hold a current position within the county commissioners, I have not researched that enough.
Thank you. Candidate Barron?
Thank you. I did turn my mic on. I'm sorry for the previous time. Conflict of interest, policies, procedures, we've heard variation here. The issue that brought it up was addressed, and there was no conflict of interest. The statute that was brought out clearly stated that elected officials didn't fall under it. So if you're not part of something, how can you be in conflict with it? So, and as far as conflict of interest is concerned, the elected officials have to make decisions. They would be participating in some of these things. We make decisions, if you're the road commission, your road commission elected member, you make decisions on the roads, well, you use the roads too. And that's pretty similar. What this conflict of interest, as has been mentioned, can be easily weaponized, but it's only because people don't understand the facts. Decisions have to be made. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll be moving on to our final question before closing statements. And this goes to Candidate Moyle. Candidate Moyle, what would you do to help attract and retain qualified county employees?
Well, that's a loaded question. Obviously, when you can make more at Walmart, than you can in some county positions, we need to increase wages. I mean, we treat our people well. And I think that's known, but people have to eat, so they're going to go where they make the most money. My greatest amount of concern is in the corrections department. I think our corrections community are outstanding officers. They have a terribly challenging job. They get a lot of resource, but I think we need to pay them more. That's the bottom line. We have to find a way to come up with the funding, and not only for their paychecks, but their training. And so Delta County is an outstanding place to live. People come to vacation where we live every day. Sometimes we lose sight of that. So I think Administrator DeSalvo has done an outstanding job negotiating these contracts, and she needs a pat on the back for that. But as a commission, I would support really looking into upping the wages of many of our employees. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Vangenhoven?
Having sat in on many county commissioners' meetings, it seems that at almost every meeting there is a resignation of a position within the county that will need to be filled. Speaking with Sheriff Oswald, I asked about his turnover specifically within his department. He said you could pay people twice as much and they would still leave. And he said it's because of a generational shift that we see where people are no longer living to work, they are working to live. And they do not have the same type of feeling towards their job that they used to, where you used to go and work a 9 to 5 to be able to provide for your family. Now the generational shift wants to also enjoy their work day. They're spending time away from their family. They want to do something that they're passionate about. With the jail, for instance, because we have such a high problem with mental health and drug issues, being a correction officer is not a desirable job no matter how much you pay them. So we really need to look at a generational shift in how we can retain employees on a different level.
Thank you. Candidate Barron?
Well, I mentioned about this issue earlier, that we've had a high turnover in our county staff, and it's been going on for a while. There's a lot of information that we need to gather from this. We don't have any specific ideas about what it is. We have a lot of different pieces. They've got to be put together to address the overall problem. And I just don't see that we have enough information yet. And we need to get that from the people who are leaving, finding out if there's retirements, there's different jobs, there's just a whole array. And to make it more attractive to be an employee of Delta County is to make Delta County more attractive. And that is having a very representative, or being very open to people coming in, to developing business, and having our climate such that it's attractive, and also working on our major issues. We've heard about the drug issue and everything else. These things have to be addressed because they're causing problems everywhere. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Nelson?
I bring this up during the meetings many times, if you hear me, because we get notified, it's part of our meeting when somebody resigns or somebody is leaving. We know of that through the meetings. That's how we get in contact with that. And I commented more than once that I can't believe the turnover that we've had, what's going on in that department. But I know everybody wants a raise, but I don't always agree that it's just money either. It's the type of job that they're doing, especially at the jail. You have a very low attendance out there right now. I just heard the sheriff say this morning in a meeting what his attendance was in the jail right now, his residency there. He said it's very low right now, but anticipating it'll go back up again. He just said that in a 911 meeting that I was at this morning. So it's very challenging. And then again, at the courthouse, it's very challenging because we cover a lot of hours over there. You think it's an 8 to 4 or 7:30 to 3, whatever you think those hours are, there's people over there cleaning right now. So we do need to be considerate of that.
Thank you. We have now come to the final moments of the candidate forum for the District County Commissioners, when each of our candidates will be given 1 minute to make a closing statement. Candidate Vangenhoven, you may begin.
First, thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting the forum this evening. This is my first time, so I really appreciate it. I would like to remind our county and our local community that no matter who wins this election and who's sitting at the commissioners' table in January, that we are more alike than we are different. Like Helen Keller once said, alone we can do so little, but together we can do so much. I look forward to the opportunity of serving District 4 in Delta County as your commissioner, and I will do this fairly, openly, and honestly. I promise to consistently show up, to listen to all concerned parties, make the best decisions I can, and follow proper processes when doing so. I have worked very hard over the last few years to prepare myself for this moment. I have sat on many boards, committees, and commissions, and I just ask for your vote. I'm ready for this, and thank you for listening. I hope you have a nice night.
Thank you. Candidate Barron, you may begin.
I thank you for having this forum and being able to speak this evening. I do ask for your vote. I've served in my second year. I'd like to serve some more. I have a lot of experience in different areas to bring forth to the board, and I'd like to see a lot of things done that we're working on and addressing. And it takes time to get those things done. It's not a fast unit. One thing that was mentioned earlier about a 10-year contract. If you're really going to get something done, and people are doing a good job, you need to help. It takes more than just 2 or 3 years. It has to be a long-term plan. I'm a farmer. We plan decades ahead. We don't plan short-term. The short-term is what we're getting done, so we can go for the long-term. So I'd like your vote, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Candidate Nelson?
I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters, too. This is a lot of work to put it together. You guys, most of you work during the day besides, so thank you for that. But I also need to thank the residents of Delta County that have really come out and helped me with this campaign this year. I'm not used to having competition, and it was my first time, so we really worked hard together. I cannot believe the people that came forward to help me, all of you, and to the residents. I hope you come out and will vote for me. I would enjoy going out to my new district, which would be included in the Escanaba Township area. With the Reapportionment Act in 2018, that's what this District 3 has gained, is Escanaba Township. So we only lost from 5th Avenue to 8th Avenue. That's District 4, and then I go 8th Avenue South out to M35, and then also Escanaba Township, Schaefer, Bark River, and Hyde. So I thank all of you. I hope you remember me when you go to the polls. You know who to re-elect. Just check me off on the bottom. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Candidate Moyle?
Well, my thanks again to the League for this forum and your service, and to those people who've come by. Democracy only works if people get involved. In 18 years of public service, whether it's Mayor Pro Tem of Escanaba or 12 years as a county commissioner, you've never heard me say we need to raise your taxes and you need to be responsible taxpayers because it's antithetical to what I stand for. People are struggling right now with this inflation and we all are holding on to try to survive. We need the right kind of leadership in place that understands how to live within its means so that we don't dig into your pocket additionally. I would like to focus on all sorts of areas in this county. I'm very proud of the accomplishments that I've made, but 10% inflation will weaken the dollar substantially. So bringing infrastructure and manufacturing in is critical. Operating within our means is critical, and understanding that smaller government is better government, and staying out of your pocket is even better government. That's critical. I'd like to continue with your support and your trust on November the 8th, and I thank you very much. God bless.
Thank you. Each of our candidates has now made their closing remarks. Thank you once again for participating in our forum this evening. We will take a brief 5-minute break to set up for the second segment featuring the Delta County Prosecuting Attorney race.
Could we have the candidates for prosecuting attorney please take their seats, and would the audience settle down and take their seats as well?
Good evening and welcome back to the second segment of the Candidates Forum. My name is Shannon Taylor and I will serve as tonight's moderator. This forum is sponsored by the Delta County League of Women Voters and the American Association of University Women. I will now introduce the candidates for the Delta County Prosecuting Attorney and explain the specific rules for the forum. Again, welcome and thank you for participating. Our candidates will go in alphabetical order. They will make their 1-minute opening statements and respond to questions. This will be a rotating response order. Each candidate will be given 1 minute to respond to each of the questions asked. A beep will sound when your 60 seconds are up, and the timer will also hold up a red card when your time has elapsed. Please refer to the timer in the front row. The forum will end with each candidate giving a 1-minute closing statement. During this forum, candidates are asked to respond only to the questions asked by the moderator. Please be respectful of other candidates. Active debate with other candidates is not allowed. A parliamentarian will be present to ensure rules are followed. You are, however, free to address any appropriate issue during your opening and closing remarks. Audience members are free to submit as many questions as they would like. As many questions as time permits will be read and answered. Now, if our candidates have no questions, we will proceed with opening statements. Candidate Diane K. Huggaboom, welcome. Thank you. You have the floor for 1 minute, beginning now.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Diane K. Huggaboom. I'm a candidate for prosecuting attorney in Delta County. I want to start out by thanking the League of Women Voters for all of the hard work in planning this event today. I want to thank all the audience members for participating, for bringing good questions, and for your attention to this election. I am a trial attorney with 15 years trial experience. 17 years ago, I graduated from law school and I started working with children and families in the foster care system. I then transitioned to working in criminal work because a lot of my foster families ended up in the criminal justice system as well. My heart and the reason I do this work is to continue to support the children in the community and the families in the community. I will do my best and to ensure that we prosecute the serious offenses to the full extent of the law. I really want to focus on the violent crimes and rating the problem of the drugs that erode the fabric of our society. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Lauren Wickman, welcome. You now have the floor for 1 minute.
Thank you. I'm Lauren Wickman. I'm currently serving as the acting prosecutor for Delta County, and I want to thank you all for being here. The Wickman family has ties in the Delta County community dating back to the late 1800s, with family members in the Gladstone area, Wells Township, Bark River area, Ford River area, and Escanaba. I myself sought out to be not only just an attorney, but a prosecutor at a young age, and I tailored my college career at the University of Wisconsin and later my law school career at the Michigan State University College of Law. I interned in several counties downstate before I returned to Delta County in 2015 serving as an intern. In 2016, I came up here as a full-fledged attorney and an assistant prosecutor and worked my way up through the office. In March of 2018, I was appointed as the chief assistant, and I've been serving as the acting prosecutor since April of 2022. I'm somebody who has sought to protect this community. I want to pursue the drug dealers that are in our community and ensure that Delta County is safe.
Thank you. That now concludes opening statements. We will now proceed with questions submitted from the audience. Since the opening statement began with candidate Kay Huggaboom, we will now move on to candidate Wickman to answer the first audience question. Candidate Wickman, what would be your top 3 priorities as the prosecuting attorney for Delta County?
Serving in the office, I have seen several things that I think need to be the top priority for the prosecutor's office moving forward. First, being a self-sufficient, efficient, and informed office. Second, providing resources for victims of crimes as well as community members to understand how the criminal justice system works. And finally, targeting drug dealing within the community. Speaking to my first point, I would like to pursue as many grant opportunities to create our office as economically self-sufficient from the county's budget as possible, especially considering the economic challenges that lie ahead. I would like to provide those resources back into the community in numerous ways, including providing grant funding for victim services within our community and targeting the drug dealing within the community to target those perpetuating the drug problem within our community, not just those that are simply using the drugs. Going after the heart of the problem rather than just the simple person possessing the substance. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Huggaboom?
My first priority is to really address the issue of violent crimes in the community and make sure that victims of violent crimes are heard, that those cases are prosecuted to the full extent of the law, that we don't plea down rape cases, domestic violence cases, cases with victims who are physically hurt. My second priority is to address the drug issues in the community and try to stop the revolving door of people who go into short jail stints or prison stints, come out without really any treatment, and then go back to doing the same things that got them put in jail and prison in the first place. My third priority is to really focus on one of the areas of the prosecutor's office that is not focused on, and that is to work with the kids in foster care. The prosecutor represents the people in those cases, and my priority is to make sure that those cases are handled fairly, that we do the best to provide services and strengthen those families, because every ounce we put into those cases prevents crime in the future.
Thank you. We now have a 2-part question. Candidate Huggaboom, I'll start with you first, then we'll allow candidate Wickman to answer, and then candidate Wickman, I'll give you the second part of the question first, and then candidate Huggaboom, it'll go to you. So candidate Huggaboom, what is your position on requiring the use of cash bail only?
So cash bail is a difficult, there are situations where it's absolutely appropriate to not have a cash bail. If there are the legislature has certain offenses where we absolutely should not have cash bail. If somebody is imprisoned or is arrested for a murder or rape, there are times when it's not appropriate to issue them a bail. The more pertinent question with cash bail is, what do we do about low-level offenders, people who are in poverty, who are arrested, and then The option is they can either sit in jail and wait for their trial date, or they can be given a PR bond or a non-cash bail to be out in the community waiting their trial date. We're doing pretty good in this community about getting trials quick, but they're not quick enough for those who are waiting and sitting only because they can't afford to get out.
Thank you. Candidate Wickman?
I think cash bail only is too broad of a term. Each case here in Delta County is looked at on an individual basis. And one of the things that all the judges look at before they set bond is whether or not that individual could, that defendant could hurt an individual or the community. And so I always focus on what that potential harm could be, whether that's a domestic violence type charge, whether it's an operating while intoxicated, where we have a concern that individual is going to get behind the wheel. There needs to be something more to ensure that they are not going to repeat that behavior before they're back in front of the court. Not only to ensure that they are compliant with the law, but to ensure that the community and the public as a whole are safe.
Thank you. And for the follow-up part to that question, Candidate Wickman, do you think the current process for determining bail is fair and equitable? Why or why not?
The way Delta County approaches it, I think it is fair and equitable. Looking at the process that is done first in front of Judge Parks at the district court level, and then later, if it's a felony case, and the circuit court looks at that person as a whole. There's not a one-size-fits-all that applies to any individual or any case. They're not looking just at that charge, but they're looking at that individual to see whether or not that individual has a history of failing to show up for court, has a failure to follow the court's order in the past, or what that harm might be to the community. So I think it is fair and equitable. In each instance, the individual as well as potentially community members, their family, are heard by the courts, and that's all taken into account before that either cash bond or the terms and conditions of that bond are set. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Huggaboom?
So one of the ways I think that our process and how we set bail in this community could be really improved is that the prosecutor's office could be more involved. Right now, as a defense attorney, I attend arraignments at a good half of the time. Other attorneys cover them the rest of the time. I can't count a single case in the last 2 years where the prosecutor has sent an attorney to an arraignment to address the issue of bail and address the issue of bond. And I think that it's appropriate that, especially if there's a violent crime, that the prosecutor sends an attorney to address the court and explain why they think a bond should be set at a certain level at the initial arraignment. And that is a place where I think we could really improve our system.
Thank you. Candidate Huggaboom, the current prosecutor's office has a lot of turnover. What would you do to improve them?
So one of the benefits I have as an attorney with many, many years of experience is that I have a lot of colleagues who I know from other offices who are in positions of leadership in other offices. One of the first things I would do is reach out to them and try to see if they have people that they've trained who are either retiring and looking to move up north, or people that they've trained as young prosecutors that they maybe can't hire, and try to bring on and fully staff the prosecutor's office. They haven't been able to fully staff that office for quite some time. The other things that I really want to focus on are making sure that the attorneys in the office have work-life balance, that they are able to maintain the things in their lives that make lives worth living aside from just doing what we do. And I think that that's going to help maintain the office and stability. There are reasons why people come up north, right? They're to have times, and there's a reason why we live here. We live in a place with beautiful lakes and rivers and with a wonderful community, and we want to have time to spend with those people.
Thank you. Candidate Wickman?
Being a part of the office when there may have been that turnover, I know firsthand that most of those decisions were made on personal reasons, whether it's a family change, having a baby, those types of things. So I don't think those things can always be accounted for. We have a tremendous staff in the prosecutor's office, and we've created a strong connection with Bay College to be able to bring in clerical staff and educated staff to be able to do the job and do the job extraordinarily well. They take just as much pride in their job as I take in my job. Looking at the role of the prosecutors and assistant prosecutors, one of the things that is most concerning is the wage aspect of that. You have somebody who's coming in at a $50,000 full-time employment when they could go into private practice and make twice as much. So trying to remain competitive in that market and that area is something very critical that I'm keeping close tabs on it.
Thank you. Candidate Wickman, Do you think the current plea bargaining process fairly considers the interests of all sides? Why or why not?
The plea bargaining process is unfortunately a necessary evil. The courts would grind to a halt without the plea bargaining process. Looking at how I approach it, I look at each case individually. I look at each individual involved in the case on a particular basis, whether that's the defendant or whether that's the victim. As a prosecutor, you have to open up your entire playbook. You don't get to hold anything back. And so we have to look at and assess whether or not that case is triable and whether that case is winnable. And in looking at if I can have somebody held accountable for years in prison, but the victim may not get their day in court, I'd rather have that than have them walk out the door. And so the plea bargaining process is something that is necessary for how the court system works and how the courts can move efficiently. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Huggaboom?
There are times and places for plea bargains, and there are times and places when they should not happen. I have seen through the last few years plea bargains in cases where they absolutely should not be afforded. There should not be plea bargains offered in cases of violent crimes and sexual assaults, especially in cases where the victims do not want that plea bargain to go forward. I've spoken to several victims over the course of this campaign who've explained to me that they have had pleas issued on cases that they are not happy about. And I think that the place where we need to improve the plea bargaining process most is making sure that those victims feel as though justice is accomplished on their case. And we need to keep the victims first, at the community second, and then we need to proceed in what's appropriate given those constraints. And sometimes there are cases that are going to be hard cases to try that we're going to have to try because it's just not appropriate.
Thank you. Candidate Huggaboom, how do you plan to fight the drug issue in our community?
So the drug issue is really complicated, and I've been working with substance users for more than 15 years, and there's a lot of times when people like to divide people into users and dealers, and we're going to be really hard on the dealers. And we need to realize that users become dealers, and dealers are also users, and we need to look at everybody in the process. We need to to use a word from Mr. Moyle, walk softly and carry a big stick. We need to encourage people into treatment when appropriate, and when that's not appropriate, we need to have appropriate incarcerative sentences. If people don't take the advantages that the community is giving them as far as resources for treatment, then the incarcerative penalties need to be used. That said, I think that we also need.
Thank you. Candidate Wickman?
I was appointed as the primary drug prosecutor in the Delta County Prosecutor's Office in 2018. And it was something that allowed me to go out with the drug teams and law enforcement and see the firsthand problems. And one of the things that I've discussed with them over the years is targeting those drug dealers that are not the community drug dealers, not the low-level dealers, the ones who are passing a baggie here and a baggie there, but those that are bringing in the large quantities into our community from outside of this area. So I would like to seek and continue to seek out those individuals that are bringing in the 3 ounces of the methamphetamine, that are perpetuating and flooding our community with that poison. It's something that I've taken great pride into, sending those people to prison. Those are the people that are infiltrating this community and making the drug problem worse.
Thank you. Candidate Wickman, what is your philosophy on the prosecutor's discretion within mandated sentencing guidelines?
One of the things that I've always just been drawn to is the sentencing guidelines, and I think because it puts a finite guideline on what we can do and where we're at. I think they're a tool for the prosecutor's office to look at and ensure that the ultimate sentence is within something that the community wants and can live with and has that deterrent effect all at the same time. It's something that I look at as that guideline when I'm making those plea bargaining cases. And I can think of only a handful of cases where I've tried to either exceed that guidelines based on certain circumstances, as they do become that guideline for how the courts proceed. You hear it from Judge Economopoulos, that is what is the proportional sentence. It is there by legislator. It is there for a reason. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Huggaboom?
So the sentencing guidelines are one of the ways in which, as prosecutor, I would really like to improve the plea bargaining process. Now, the plea bargaining process typically involves reducing to a lower charge, right? People will get lowered down from a delivery to an attempted delivery or a delivery to a possession or something of that range. What I would like to do is through the plea bargaining process, look at each case individually, see if this is a case with aggravating circumstance, if this was something more serious, or if it's a more simple case, and then agree to a sentencing within the bottom third of the guidelines, the middle third of the top third, which gives rather than pleading down to lower charges that sometimes allow people to have lower potential penalty or the lower max penalty, it'll give the defendants a sense of finiteness and a sense of what to expect, and get the convictions for the community.
Thank you. Candidate Huggaboom, do you believe virtual trials violate a defendant's right to face their accusers?
Yes, and we frankly don't do virtual trials here. I haven't been involved in any trials in Delta County or frankly in the state of Michigan that haven't had the defendant in person and the jury in person. So while that question, I absolutely agree with it does violate due process, it frankly doesn't happen.
Thank you. Candidate Wickman?
I would agree. I don't think virtual trials, would say it is a violation. I think Zoom and virtual items are appropriate at times for certain hearings. They're a tool, but they're not the end-all be-all, and they should not be used in a trial situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Wickman, with the increase in child welfare issues, what is your plan to assure that services that promote the reunification of families are available and are viable for our community?
One of the things I spearheaded back in 2018 was the actual inclusion of a child and youth advocate within the Delta County Prosecutor's Office. Through the use of grants, we were able to fund that position for several years with the intention that that person be the individual that goes along with the children, both in the criminal side of things in case there's a domestic situation or similar type crime charged, but also provide that service and resource within the probate side of things. I also spearheaded and was essential to bringing the CAC back within local control and ensuring that that community resource was here to stay, and actually reached out beyond the borders of Delta County to assist children. So those are both things that I would continue and would like to continue to expand upon.
Thank you. Candidate Wickman, how do you feel about utilizing the Holmes Youthful Trainee Act?
I'm sorry, was I supposed to answer that question
Oh.
too?
Yep, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. So one of the big goals that I have is to help find grant funding for a partner agency. I don't think that this is an appropriate necessarily role for the prosecutor, but to have a parent advocate program where there is a parent who has gone through the child welfare system who can help guide the parents involved with the foster care system as to what's going on, because children are best with their families when at all appropriate, and sometimes having somebody who's gone through that system can help guide people. Through my 15 years of trial practice, and I started out at a CASA program that was an advocate for sexually assaulted and children who are victim of violent crimes. I've been really interested in this issue. One of the biggest and most important things I've ever done in my career was I spearheaded the creation of a family treatment court in another jurisdiction. That court was a drug court model for foster care cases and improved the reunification rate, and I'd like to pursue those sort of options here.
Thank you. Candidate Huggaboom, now that we've got our things back in order, how do you feel about utilizing the Holmes Youthful Trainee Act?
I think the Holmes Youthful Trainee Act is a great tool. It allows young people who are first-time offenders, who do not have an extensive criminal history, to earn their way to a clear record. right? If they comply with the probation terms, whatever they are assigned by the judge through the course of their probation, they can come out of their probation without a record. And it's important because it gives people a chance to be more than what their worst day was, right? And I'm in favor of using it when at all possible. I don't think for certain violent crimes, it's by statute not allowed, but other crimes it's just not appropriate because they're violent nature. But unless it's one of those issues where it's an issue of violence, I think that it's absolutely appropriate to give people a second chance, especially if they're a first-time offender.
Thank you, Candidate Wickman.
I think with HIDA or Holmes Youthful Trainee, it's important to look at the case by case, but I think whenever possible, it is important to use. It's a tool that's available to prosecutors' offices as well as defendants. It allows for first-time or low-level offenders to have resources and options that they might not previously have been exposed to, perhaps more structure and accountability than they'd been previously exposed to. And those that take advantage of it do come out with a clean record and can still be useful members of society without that felony or criminal record hanging over their head. So I think whenever it's possible, and the cases specifically allows for it, I think it's absolutely appropriate tool.
Thank you. And Candidate Wickman, kind of a follow-up to that question. How do you feel about Bay Pines and the county's access to using it?
I wish we had more access to Bay Pines and similar type facilities. I think we have some juvenile offenders within the community that have had that lack of accountability over the years in a variety of formats. And so I think that's the final step if they're being detained in a juvenile facility before they get to the adult level court. The adult level court as a juvenile can be a scary place, and it should be a scary place, but it should be a place that's only used as a last resort. And so looking at that progression, I think it needs to, in certain instances, be utilized for that last-ditch effort to keep a juvenile out of the adult court system.
Thank you. Candidate Hagavoom.
I think it's hugely important. And so just to clarify for audience members who may not be aware, the reason that we don't have an ability to use Bay Pines often to house our local juvenile defendants is because Bay Pines has been utilized as a state facility. So their beds are full with kids from downstate. Meanwhile, we have kids who need detention here who have nowhere to go because we don't have a place to house them locally. I think that absolutely is an issue that needs to be addressed. We need to work out a way that we can house kids besides putting a 16-year-old in the Delta County Jail in isolation, which takes up both which is frankly not great for that kid, and also takes up jail resources to have a cell that is used for isolation, and then also the staff to have the extra staff to work on that isolation and staff that child appropriately and keep eyes on him.
Thank you. Candidate Hageboom, will you be willing to end or suspend the contract with DHHS when the agency seeks to return children to persons being charged with crimes endangering their children in Delta County?
So I take sort of a hybrid approach to this. The prosecutor's office has the role of representing the people in the county and also represents the Department of Health and Human Services. Currently, the prosecutor's office represents DHS and does what they say. My role in the office will be to be co-petitioner. What that means is that I do what I think is best on the case as the prosecutor. And if DHHS doesn't agree, they can hire their own attorneys. And so I'm going to be driving the bus here, not the department.
Thank you. Candidate Wickman?
The contract with DHS is something that I've been reviewing over the last couple months. It's something that our office currently uses as an income source, and that's my concern there. It is not something that allows us to currently both represent DHS and represent the people, I believe, adequately, and it puts us in a position where at times we are in a contrary position to where our victim may be. I can think of several instances where DHS is requesting the removal of children where that individual is then a victim of a crime as well. and it creates definitely a conflict. And there have been instances in the past where we've had that conflict and utilized that conflict to remove ourselves from the case and represent that victim in the criminal side of things. To completely remove the contract, I think, loses some of that control over the cases. And looking at it from simply a time and efficiency standpoint, our office is far too small as it is now and has been in the past to be co-petitioner on every single case that comes through the probate court.
Thank you. We have now come to the final minutes of the candidate forum for the Delta County Prosecuting Attorney. Candidates will be given 1 minute to make a closing statement. Candidate Wickman, you may begin now.
Thank you, and thank you all again for being here, and thank you for the League of Women Voters for putting on this fantastic place for us to be able to provide the information to the community. I'm here for the community. I have been serving in this role since 2016. I have learned and observed both the good and the bad, and have formulated this office in the last 6 months to reflect myself, not my predecessors. I've taken those goods and taken those bads and put them into place in what I believe can be the most efficient and self-sustaining office that this county has seen from the prosecutor's office in a long time. I look at the drug problem as a major issue, and I want to be able to provide services not only to victims of crime, but the community as a whole. I am here for Delta County. I have been here for Delta County. The Wickmans have been here for Delta County, and I hope to have your vote on November 8th. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Huggaboom, you have the floor for 1 minute.
Thank you very much. So my position is that I am running for this office because I think it would be good for the community for me to be the prosecutor. I don't need this job. Frankly, I love what I do. I love my work as a defense attorney, but I think that my role in this community should be to help lead the prosecutor's office to do better than we have been. The ball has been dropped by this office when it comes to how the office treats the community and how the office treats victims. The office can do better, and we're going to do better under my leadership.
Thank you. Each of our candidates has now made their closing remarks. Thank you once again for participating in our forum this evening. We will take a brief 5-minute break to set up for the third segment, the Michigan State House of Representatives, 108th District. Thank you. I will now introduce the candidates for the Michigan House of Representatives, 108th District. Again, welcome and thank you for participating. Our candidates will go in alphabetical order. They will make their 1-minute opening statements and respond to questions. This will be a rotating response order. Welcome, candidate Chris Lopez. Candidate Lopez, you have the floor for 1 minute, beginning now.
Thank you. My name is Chris Lopez. I want to help all of you. It doesn't matter what party you belong to or what your beliefs are. I want to know what your issues are and what I can do to best help make your life better. I want to create more opportunities for our children, and I want to solve all of our society's issues in our elementary schools with our kids. And then after we solve those issues and we can stop the same problems that we have ourselves today for our children, then we can focus on solving our own problems. But my goal is to focus on our children and to make the UP an energy producer and make the Lower Peninsula care about us again. We deserve a lot more respect, and I want to be a representative to bring that respect and give representation that the UP and the 108th has never had before. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Dave Preston, you have the floor for 1 minute, beginning now.
Thank you. I'd like to first thank everyone for providing this venue tonight. Just a brief rundown of my history, former owner-operator of Cedar River Plaza. My family and I took that out of bankruptcy back in 2007. Operated that for 10 years. And 15 years later, that property is still going strong. We sold it about 5 years ago. During that time at Eldred Delta, or at Cedar River Plaza, I ran for the Eldred Delta Board of Directors. I've been serving as a director at the Eldred Delta Cooperative for 9 years now. We service about 10,000 members, so energy has always been a keen interest of mine. Two-term county commissioner in Menominee County. I serve on the health board. That's the dual county. Delta is Menominee County Health Board, Finance Board, and the Fair Board Committee. And I have a parallel career in EMS and fire, 12-year volunteer fire department and 10 years in Mid-County Rescue Squad. And for the last 3 years, I'm a paramedic down at Bay Area Medical Center, which is a hospital in Marinette that services southern Menominee County and all of Marinette County. And finally, a substitute teacher at my daughter's high school. She talked me into it because of COVID. Thank you.
Thank you, candidate Preston. Since the opening statement began with candidate Lopez, we will now move on to candidate Preston to answer the first audience question. Candidate Preston, what would be your top 3 priorities as state representative?
Top 3 priorities, I've said this over and over, government overreach, regulatory reform are probably number 1 on my list. Being an entrepreneur for most of my adult life, the amount of onerous red tape, regulation that a small business operator has to juggle with in order to stay successful, stay profitable, is egregious, especially in Michigan. I've worked in many states. I got to say Michigan was at the top of the list as far as difficulty in operations and staying regulatory compliant. Energy. Like I said, I'm on the Eldred Delta Board of Directors. Energy is paramount with us. We're already looking at another possible rate increase just due to the current economic environment. Line 5, that tunnel needs to be put in. That pipeline is vital to the UP and the interests. And the third thing is public safety. As a county commissioner, we invested a lot of money to shore up our corrections and our sheriff's department.
Thank you. Candidate Lopez?
My priority.
Thank you, Candidate Lopez. Candidate Lopez, do you believe that the 2020 presidential election was free and fair, or do you believe the election was stolen? What are your views on the conclusions made in the report completed by the Oversight Committee on Michigan's 2020 election results?
I think that the 2020 elections were fair and that every election has a certain amount of fraud in it. That's always going to be a battle no matter how secure elections are. And I agree with the report that the elections were secure and it was a fair and free election. But furthermore, I have concerns that we use private corporations, third-party voting machines to count our ballots. I think that there's a lot of security flaws with that, and I'd like to see a lot more investigation and how we can make that a lot more secure.
Thank you. Candidate Preston?
There was a lot of, I have the fortune of, in a previous market, the Milwaukee market, watching fraudulent ballots being cast. There was a situation in an election down there where I literally witnessed school buses loading up homeless, handing out packs of cigarettes and busing them to the polling to cast their ballot. That happened all throughout the day, late into the night. I know that that type of activity is systemic in our nation. COVID, I really feel, brought a curtain, a fog screen over our election process. I believe in the findings of Michigan's committee. I just don't know that we'll ever know the truth. I don't know that COVID will ever allow us to know the truth. That being said, we are a country ruled by laws, and the die was cast, and it was done. So,
Candidate Preston, what is your position on the current ballot proposal that would change the term limits in Michigan? What is your position on requiring all elected state officials to disclose the sources of personal financial income and assets?
I'm personally a proponent of this proposal. I feel, a long time ago, I had a phone call with Charlie Owens, who then was the president of the NFIB for Michigan. And I was very frustrated with the lack of progress being made in the legislature. And I personally had traced it down to the short amount of time that a legislator was able to spend. They would spend the first 2 years learning their job. By the time they actually had a good grip on their responsibilities, they were termed out. So I have been a proponent of extending the term limits. Probably since I got up here, I recognized what I perceive as a flaw intrinsically with these short 2-year terms, because if candidates, they're always running for re-election or learning their job or termed out. So I personally am in support of the proposal, both on the financial disclosure as well as the extensions or contraction, depending on how you look at it.
Thank you. Candidate Lopez?
When it comes to Prop 1, I support the financial disclosures portion. I largely support the reform for it. I believe, I agree with Mr. Preston that the 2-year terms are too short, and it's a lot of fundraising, a lot of election time, and we need to have a lot more reform in that aspect. I just don't think that Prop 1 really addresses the actual need for election reform, but I'm more for it than I am against it.
Thank you. Candidate Lopez, do you want to see the election procedures and/or voting rights changed? And if so, how and why?
I would like to see a lot more access for people who are disabled, especially. I think that's a group that's largely overlooked. Those people who can't leave their homes or are unable to hold a pen and write themselves. We need a procedure for those people, and we need a larger review for the most needy voters in our districts to ensure that they have access to voting systems and people who can assist them to vote. And I think that should come from the clerk's office or another representative from the voting organizations who control our voting systems.
Thank you. Candidate Preston?
Could you just repeat that one more time?
Yes. Do you want to see election procedures and/or voting rights changed? And if so, how and why?
Yes, I'd like to see them tightened up. The the ballot initiative that's coming out on the ballot, I think will, if it's put into the Constitution, will completely eviscerate our election law process. It'll promote devious activity. You know, being able to request an absentee ballot for life, when you don't have the clerks maintaining the voter rolls and cleansing those voter rolls, what's to stop the harvesting of those ballots? You know, drop boxes for every 15,000, opening up the floodgates of outside money pouring into our electoral system. I feel that proposal is an attack on Michigan's voting sovereignty and the elections validation, if you would say. So I'm for making our elections much more secure. Voter ID is paramount on it all.
Thank you. Candidate Preston, do you support freedom of choice and medical privacy for people in all matters of healthcare, including reproductive rights? Why or why not?
I'm a pro-life candidate. I'm proud of my Right to Life endorsement from Right to Life Michigan. What alarms me on Proposition 3 is it is going to strip parents of all of their rights regarding parental consent, overseeing their children on reproductive rights, sex change operations, puberty blockers. I mean, the ramifications of this, if it were put into law, are staggering. It would allow abortion up to and including birth, with nothing put in place to leave a baby that was born alive to stay alive. Eliminate conscientious protection laws for doctors and nurses, and undermine the screenings of women coerced into abortion, whether it be from potentially unlawful situations like rape, incest, or human trafficking.
Thank you. Candidate Lopez?
Even though I personally don't agree with abortion, I think that a lot of our elected officials forget that our personal opinions should not necessarily drive our policies. I support individual rights and privacy above all else. I don't think the government has any right to tell us what we can or can't do between our doctors or within our families or our own personal decisions that only affect our lives and nobody else's. It's nobody's right but our own. It's nobody's privacy but our own. And when it comes to Prop 3, that does nothing but secure the rights that we've had in this country, that women have had in this country for the last 50 plus years. It doesn't take parental rights away. It doesn't do anything except for allow access and privacy that already existed since before the whole time that happened with SCOTUS this year. And women's choice is nobody's business but their own and their doctor.
Thank you. Candidate Lopez, what do you see as the unique challenges facing the constituents across the newly redistricted and much geographically larger 108th district?
So don't get me wrong, the 108th is very diverse and it's much different than the previous 108th, but the one common theme that I've found between every voter in every county throughout our district is that they're affected by inflation. They're affected by taxes and they can't afford their daily lives anymore. They're at a point where if it continues to increase, then we're going to have a larger poverty problem on our hands than we have in the past. And it's something that we need to get ahead of, and that needs to come through tax reform. And we need to see how we can actually help the citizens of our country, give them some income tax relief, give them some sales tax relief, give them some property tax relief, and give them the opportunities and the proper environment for them to thrive.
Thank you. Candidate Preston?
The biggest thing that I see that encompasses the entire district is a failure of opportunity. You know, when I drive through the UP, and I've said this in previous events, I see hotel after resort after gas station shut down, closed, shuttered, lost their grandfather status, cannot reopen. These buildings are strewn all throughout the district. They don't need money. They don't need handouts from the government or from the state. What they need the state to do is to back off and allow people to flourish, for people to get back to work, for people to open businesses, create microeconomies of scale in their communities. That's what I see is happening throughout my district. It's just a failure and a lack of opportunity. And I really feel that that oppression and suppression is directly correlated to Lansing and its policies.
Thank you. Candidate Preston, describe what you believe the Second Amendment means, and do you support any common sense gun control measures?
The right to bear arms shall not be infringed. It says it just as stated. It is our right to bear arms. It is our last line of defense against a tyrannical government. I firmly believe that. I'm a pro-constitutional carry candidate, have been. We are an open carry state. Working at the truck stop, I noticed several times individuals that would come in open carrying, and I could see the anxiety on the faces of the customers around them due to that open carry. If we're going to be an open carry state, let's just be constitutional concealed carry. It would make things much better. That being said, I really like Idaho's program. They have an enhanced concealed carry where then you would get the reciprocity across the other states. But yes, I'm pro Second Amendment constitutional carry.
Thank you. Candidate Lopez?
I'm a full supporter of the Second Amendment as it's written, and especially as its original intention. A big part of the Second Amendment is that being part of a well-regulated militia. Those militias that our founding fathers were talking about eventually became the state's National Guards. And I wholly believe that we would be a better society, a safer society, and a much more resilient society against foreign attacks if we required all of our gun owners to be part of the state militia or the federal forces to get the proper training and mental health screenings that would help us ensure the safety of gun owners across the country. And it would all be within the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment was designed to ensure that we had a strong military and a backup reserve force, and we need to ensure that we utilize that.
Thank you. Candidate Lopez, what do you think about the State Historic Preservation Office designating the Menominee River by the proposed gold mine as historic?
I'm going to be honest, I don't really have much of an opinion on the historic aspect of the river. I mean, it's a river, so of course it has established history. But I think that it would be important to engage with the office on a regular basis to get their opinions on it. But I'll be honest with you, I'm undecided at this point just because I simply don't know enough about it.
Thank you. Candidate Preston?
Boy, I could take 20 minutes on this one. SHPO initially approached us as county commissioners for a letter of support for designation of this area. This area encompasses the area of the Aquila Mine project. Make no mistake, SHPO has been hijacked by the environmental cause to try to shut down this project. There is nothing about the Dog's Belly area for designation that differentiates it from any other area in Menominee County. There are old settlements and arrowheads and burial grounds strewn all throughout Menominee County, and they just happened to pick this one section of the Menominee River and went to SHPO to get its historical designation to put up a roadblock for that mine. It's the weaponization of a state, part of the state bureaucracies, to do the deeds of an environmentalist group. That is not what it was designed for, and I am in whole support of defunding that organization.
Thank you. Candidate Preston, what is your plan to help UP veterans and military families transition back into civilian life after military service?
It's funny you bring that up. I just had a meeting with our Veteran Services officer yesterday, Mike Delis. I think as far as Menominee County is concerned, I think that we're doing a really good job. He has an assistant in there. He has a transition and a succession management for when he decides to retire. And I'm very happy with the Veteran Services program. My neighbor Kenny Marks used to run it prior to Mike, and as far as it's, I'm only exposed to it to the extent of our own county, but I'm happy with what's going on in our county with it. And to my knowledge, so are the remainder of the commissioners. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Lopez?
When it comes to veteran services, I know about this firsthand. The most important things to help veterans and their families transition from combat exposures and military life is you need three very basic things. You need to give them housing security, you need to give them financial transition security, and you need to give them mental health access. A lot of soldiers' mental health problems don't show up and don't really manifest until years after. We need to ensure that the community services are widely available and accessible. We need to ensure that the funding is appropriate for those services. Furthermore, we need to ensure that the staffing for the organizations that help veterans with these issues is properly funded so that they can have enough staff so we don't have one single person doing the work of 10.
Thank you. Candidate Lopez, how would you address the current shortage of teachers in Michigan? What is your position on allowing unlicensed teachers to teach in our school systems?
I do not support allowing unlicensed persons to teach our children. That's asinine. But I do support ensuring that our teachers, again, worker resources are important. Housing security, child care services. We need to ensure that our teachers have the proper environment so that they can live comfortably and they don't have to fund their own classroom supplies. I've seen that in every year that my children have gone to school, the teachers asking for donations, or most teachers my children have had simply bought supplies for their own classrooms. And we need to see what the needs of the classrooms are. We need to give the teachers a lot more flexibility in teaching their children. And we need to allow our teachers to have the same benefits packages that our politicians have. We need to start treating them with respect.
Thank you. Candidate Preston?
Unlicensed teachers being asinine, I take the contrarian viewpoint on that. There was a day when there were nothing but unlicensed teachers. Teaching's a calling. I'm a substitute teacher. I got involved because COVID was shutting down school days. One of our most effective teachers at Stevenson High School is a substitute. He substitutes throughout the winter every single day. Why does he substitute every single day? Because there's not enough teachers. We're devastatingly short in Stevenson with teachers. There needs to be a path to bring in skilled people that have a calling and feel a duty to serve, that want to teach. That being said, I don't believe that everybody is cut out to teach kindergartners through 5th grade. But when you get up into the high school, some of these adult professionals that have made a career in life would do well translating some of that success, progress that they've had in their own personal lives onto the high school students as they move their way into higher education and other jobs.
Thank you. We have now come to the final minutes of the candidate forum for the Michigan House of Representatives 108th District. Candidates will be given 1 minute to make a closing statement. Candidate Preston, you have the floor for 1 minute, beginning now.
Again, thank you all for providing this forum tonight. It's been great talking to you all. I would just like to reemphasize to the audience and everyone listening, please read on these proposals. The Reproductive Rights Act for All is a Trojan horse. It really undermines everything in our Judeo-Christian values. And I encourage you all to be fully informed before you vote for this election, because there's a lot at stake. These go directly into our Constitution. They become law. As a legislator, there's nothing that we can do. So I would appreciate that if you all could just take the time, do the due diligence, and I appreciate you listening to it tonight. I hope it was informative. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Lopez, you have the floor for 1 minute, beginning now.
Thank you. Thank you for hosting this, and thank you all for coming. So many beautiful people out here. I'm all about community, service, and leadership. That's all I've done my entire adult life. I've served in the military, I served our government, And now I want to serve all of you after serving my children and just being a better dad. And whether you're a Republican or not, I ask one thing of you. If you support veterans, I just ask you to look at my website, votechrislopez.com, and look at my platform and consider voting for me. That's all I ask. Thank you.
Thank you. Each of our candidates has now made their closing remarks. Thank you once again for participating in our forum this evening. We will take a brief 5-minute break to set up for the fourth segment, the Michigan State Senate 38th District. Good evening. I will now introduce the candidates for Michigan Senate 38th District. We will go in alphabetical order. They will make their 1-minute opening statements, followed by responses to audience questions. The responses are also 1 minute. It will be a rotating response order. Welcome, candidate John Brams. Candidate Brams, you have the floor for 1 minute, beginning now.
Hi, good evening. My name's John Brahms. I'm fifth generation Yooper. I was in the military for 25 years in the United States Army. I now live in my hometown where I moved back 10 years ago with my family. I work in the Marquette area public schools as a special education aide, and also a co-owner of a business that we've had in our family for over 140 years. And I'm running tonight to provide the people of the Upper Peninsula option to choose a progressive candidate if they so choose. And I hope people will respect the political process, be respectful of each other, and make a good choice regardless of who wins in November. You know, we've all Americans first, have served in the military, and we all want to move our country and our state forward. So thank you very much for the opportunity to be here tonight.
Thank you, candidate Brahms. Candidate McBroom, you have the floor for 1 minute, beginning now.
Thank you very much. It's nice to be here with you tonight. And most of you know that I'm a dairy farmer from Dickinson County, where I farm with my parents, my wife, and my late brother's wife and their children, my children. We milk about 120 cows, and there's 13 kids altogether. And it's very busy. And we're very blessed. And a few years ago, I ran for state representative, served this area for 6 years as the state representative, and in 2018, I ran for state senator, and I've been serving there the last 4 years. I'm very proud of much of the work I've been able to accomplish for the district in that time, and would appreciate and be honored to serve you for 4 more years and continue the work that I've been doing with the rest of the UP legislative team. Thank you.
Thank you, candidate McBroom. Since the opening statement began with candidate Brahms, we will now move on to candidate McBroom to answer the first audience question. Candidate McBroom, what would be your top 3 priorities as state senator?
Well, it's always difficult to boil things down to just 3 things. There's so many things that I've been working on and dealing with, but I continue to believe that one of the top priorities, and it seems probably mundane to a lot of voters, but is to improve the functioning of our government, to improve the functioning of the legislative bodies themselves, and to provide greater access for the citizens to the government. And I basically usually short-term call that by the time I leave, you'd like it to leave it in better shape than you found it. And so I've introduced many reforms to the government, to the legislature, and to our bureaucracies that I will continue to pursue, including open records, FOIA laws, and other reforms that are desperately needed to make the government more responsive and responsible and accountable to the people. We need stronger accountability and oversight in so many different areas, and that's something that's been very important to me. Continue to push on natural resources issues as well, and believe that those are paramount for the UP. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Brahms?
Thank you. I think my 3 top issues would be, I think first we should invest in infrastructure, because I believe that infrastructure of all types builds the economy, and in order to build a society, pay our bills, and function as a government, we need a robust economy that can fund what we want to do in our society. Also a strong proponent of public education. One of the reasons I work in public education is because not only I believe in it, but I've had relatives that worked in that sector, and my kids go there, and I think that public education is really a basis for your life as you extend throughout your life. And also, a lot of things have been talked about on the federal level, universal health care. I realize that sometimes we've been, universal health care is in Medicaid. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Brahms, what is your position on requiring all elected state officials to be subject to the Freedom of Information Act in all aspects of their work?
I think the Freedom of Information Act is a good idea for elected officials to be able to understand what reason they have and what to vote on various topics. It's a little bit related to Proposal 1, but I think Proposal 1 as it relates to the Freedom of Information Act is a little bit too convoluted between the term limits and the FOIA. But I think Freedom of Information Act on its own would be a good idea because I think people should know more about why people are voting the way they are, and if they have a personal interest that conflicts with the public interest. So in that sector, I would vote for support the Freedom of Information Act. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate McBroom?
Could you repeat the question in its entirety, please?
Yes. What is your position on requiring all elected state officials to be subject to the Freedom of Information Act in all aspects of their work?
Thank you. Now, this is an issue that I've studied very intently for the last 10 years, and it's not as simple as simply implementing Freedom of Information Act. We have a constitutional protection called speech and debate. It's in both the federal and the state constitution. People come and speak to their legislator frequently with very private concerns, things that are business related, health related, personally related, that shouldn't just be open to the curiosity of anyone who's coming around. And so there's important distinctions that have to be made. It's why I've created a bill called the Open Records Act for the legislature, because it has to be done in such a way that won't violate the Constitution and protects the individual who's elected ability to operate and work with their constituents, but also still provide as much transparency as is possible to the public. Meanwhile, our executive is the only executive officer in the entire country who is completely exempted from the Freedom of Information Act of our state, and that also needs to be remedied.
Thank you. Candidate McBroom, what steps, if any, should be taken to curb gun violence in our communities, and in particular, our schools?
And thank you. There's a lot that should be done when it comes to gun violence, including better understanding of guns, better training, better security, availability, whether that's at schools or anywhere else. And one of the things that's always frustrating to see is how we will have such robust security at some events and then not have that same level of security at other places, particularly our schools, which show a tremendous amount of vulnerability due to their designation and location and the people that are inside of them. We need better training. We need better understanding. We also need to look at more training for our teachers. I've been privileged to sit through several active shooter training programs that are just absolutely vital that our faculty need to have and have frequently updated. So those are a few of the things that we should be doing. There's so much more we can do, but it's a delicate balance always in the communities on this issue.
Thank you. Candidate Brahms?
I just went through 2 active shooter training drills already this year in the public schools. There's a variety of things I think we can do. I mean, we should invest in and make sure we have a robust school liaison officer program. I happen to know the SLOs in our public schools. We have a good relationship with them, and the kids respect the police because they become friends with the school personnel. We can invest in hardening schools to make sure that a would-be attacker never gets in, and making sure that anybody that would potentially harm school children, a lot of those people had mental health issues. I think Adam Land's attacker and Sandy Hook, for example. I think mental health issues should be addressed to make sure that we don't have another event.
Thank you. Candidate Brahms, what is your position on the role of the Senate or the state legislature or the governor to make vital health and safety decisions during a health emergency versus the authority of the local health departments?
I think the decision would probably be deferred to the professionals, whether it's the state level health department. You know, in our last COVID issue, it was kind of an unknown situation and a lot of difficult decisions to make. I think we've learned a lot because we've all been through kind of the crisis of our lifetime. But going forward, I would defer to the public health departments to make that decision because I think they are the residents' experts in health decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate McBroom?
Thank you. There's always an importance of having experts in a good position to understand what's going on and to be well informed. But I think that whether you study historic activities by health departments and executive branches, or even legislative branches, or you just look at the recent cases, the idea that we should defer ever to anyone other than the people who've been elected by the people of the state or of the community is wrong and dangerous. Does that mean the elected people are always going to get it right and do the best thing? No, they're not always going to get it right. But it is never right in this country for us to defer all the power and authority to someone else without those who are elected and without the people themselves who speak through their elections to have the final say in what's going on. And that has to be reestablished. And we're seeing with so many of the laws that we had in this state regarding this, that they were not well constructed to deal with that potentiality of executive abuse.
Thank you. Candidate McBroom, what is your position on the current ballot proposal that would change the term limits in Michigan? Also, what is your position on requiring all elected state officials to disclose their sources of personal financial income and assets?
Proposal 1 is a bit of a mixed bag, and I can't get through all of it in 60 seconds for you, so come and talk to me another time if you like. The House of Representatives in Michigan has become, I believe, the most dysfunctional and disgraceful legislative body in the country. And it is chiefly due to the extremely short term limits that we have, shorter than anywhere else in the country. And this proposal would dramatically help the House of Representatives. But it does it at the expense of the Senate and completely alters the current role of seniority that the Senate shares in the policy making and discussions that occur in Lansing. And I'm not sure whether that's ultimately the best, I'm sure it's not the best thing we could be doing. Is it better than what we have right now or not? I still remain undecided. As for the disclosure, some of it's fine. We can do it. I'm not opposed to it. I think to a large extent it's mostly window dressing and won't tell you a whole lot of what you think you're going to get from it, but I'm not opposed to it. But it should be much more involved if you actually want that kind of information.
Thank you. Candidate Brahms?
I also believe that's more of a two-part proposal. The second part I don't have an issue with. I'm not really in favor of term limits in general because I believe the people have a term limit. It's called an election, and they can make the term limits when they want to. I understand there's been some concern about too many terms, but I also echo the fact that 6 years, I can't even imagine learning a job in 6 years without, like in the military, it took 20 years to get the job done, right? So I would rather just go back to the drawing board and think up a new proposal. And I voted no on this one. I'll tell you right now, I vote absentee no. I'd rather find a new proposal that makes more sense and try again rather than support one I don't really feel is right. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Brahms, do you want to see election procedures and/or voting rights changed? And if so, how and why?
Well, I do support the expansion of some of the details and promote the vote, which is proposal 2. I did support that. So, you know, I've heard some concerns about mail-in voting, but We've been doing mail-in voting, like I say, again, with the military and people for millions of ballots for 100 years. I think most of the procedures, like the early voting, is a good idea because it'll actually allow people to vote in person earlier, which is not a mail-in voting. So I think overall the proposal 2 updates the procedure is a good idea, and that's why I did support it.
Thank you. Candidate McBroom?
Thank you. Most of you know the work that I've done over the last year regarding elections, and you can look through the report that I authored to see dozens and dozens of election reform issues that we strongly recommend be taken up, many of which are bipartisan issues dating back for many, many years. Some are more recent, such as the use of third-party funding directly to local communities, which is very unseemly and unwise. There's a lot of reforms that we need to do. We need to consistently update our election laws and be very proactive on that. We dramatically underfund elections in Michigan, which is part of our difficulties as well. But Proposal 2 has many, many flaws, not the least of which are encasing law right into the Constitution. So therefore, if anything goes wrong, it's not going to be easy to change. And one of the key things is this early voting proposal, which may have merit, but has no sense of ability to implement it at our local levels at all. And so how are we going to do this? Who's going to pay for it? None of that is laid out well, and it's going to be a disaster if that passes for us to implement.
Thank you. Candidate McBroom, in light of Roe v. Wade being overturned by the U.S. Supreme Court, should such cases such as Griswold, Lawrence, and Oberfeld be reevaluated as well? How should Michigan apply these changes to precedent at the state level?
Wow, in 60 seconds. I think that any case such as Obergefell or others that claim to have discovered rights in the Constitution that are not there for the obvious viewing should be considered and evaluated as whether or not they are actually fairly pronounced in the first place. I think that Roe v. Wade, if you study the actual argument that the judges make, it's an argument that even Ruth Bader Ginsburg mentioned in her writings as why Roe v. Wade was not a wise decision in the first place. A poorly written decision from its beginning, poorly reasoned and based on the Connecticut decision that came before it, establishing a right that isn't there, that the justices themselves say simply extended from the penumbras of the Constitution, not from the actual words of the Constitution. And this is always a problem, and it usurps the legislative process. If people want these rights in the Constitution, then let's do it. Let's put them in there the right way. Let's not make them up out of whole cloth.
Thank you. Candidate Brahms?
I wouldn't say I'm very familiar with that specific case, but the Proposal 3 that is in front of us is something I do support because I am a pro-choice candidate. I don't claim to be able to make a decision between a woman and her doctor or even a man and his doctor if he'd had reproductive concerns about something else that's not female-oriented. Ultimately, I think that that's a private decision, and that's something that we'll have a chance to decide on soon, on November 8th for the state of Michigan, and I do support the constitutional right to make reproductive freedom for all. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Brahms, what would you do to improve access to quality mental health care services for all residents of Michigan?
Well, in my opening statement, I said that I supported universal health care, and I believe that mental health is part of the health care that's very important. You know, there could be some proposals to expand health care access for all at the federal level. If the federal government does not expand that adequately, I think Medicaid could be expanded to make sure that that's a key concern that is addressed. And I'd look at it into the funding to make sure we had the funding available for it and implement it as fiscally appropriate. Thank you.
Candidate McBroom,
I'm sorry, would you please repeat the question?
what would you do to improve access to quality mental health care services for all residents of Michigan?
Well, thank you. Now, this is an absolutely critical question and a big project that I've been working on for the last 4 years across the UP, meeting with various groups, our county boards, our county mental health agencies, our hospitals, many other nonprofit groups that are involved in this. We have a huge disconnect all across the Upper Peninsula on all the different services that are available. What judges even say from county to county is not the same, and it creates huge confusion. There's a lot of things that we can and need to be pursuing, but I think above and beyond, one of the best catalysts that we could have for the Upper Peninsula is to have a facility here with beds for inpatient care. We need that facility. It needs to have more than 50 beds. We need to find a way to get the counties up here to work together, such as Dickinson, Delta, Menominee do with Pinecrest and Powers, where you have a 3-county authority. We need to have a 15-county authority and put this together in cooperation with our hospitals up here and get inpatient care back to the UP.
Thank you. Candidate McBroom, what role do you think state legislatures should have in developing a school district's curriculum, including its approach to diversity and/or behavioral discipline issues?
Next to none. Next to none. The ability of Lansing to properly figure out what every school district around the state needs to do to develop the curriculum that works for every individual student in this state to maximize their potential future opportunities and to deal with behavioral problems or mental health problems is impossible. Lansing cannot do that, and it's a fool's errand to think that we can. And every time one of my colleagues lets to add a new thing into making every school do this, making every school do that. Last it was financial literacy. Before that was Holocaust awareness. Now it's let's take the civics mandate and add police into that. These are all good ideas. Everybody loves the sound of them, and nobody ever wants to vote no on them. But they just create an overwhelming burden at the local level of how do we implement all of this, and when are the kids going to have time to study music or foreign language or math or sciences or agriculture or nursing or welding that they actually feel like their career path is directed towards. Local control on all these issues is paramount. Less state control, just simple oversight is all that's needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Brahms?
I think the legislature's main focus should be on making sure that all the districts have adequate funding to operate as they need to. But I would defer to the school districts and the school boards that are elected that know their communities best. You know, you have a framework at the State Board of Education, and you have several school boards throughout the state. And I think I'm not a fan of micromanagement. I don't think that we need to dictate fine details about every little program and school function and curriculum. That's why we have local elected officials for. So I think, you know, the legislature should make sure the schools have the tools they need, the funding they need to get the job done, and then give them the opportunity to do the work they need to do and give them the tools to make it happen. So that's my opinion. So.
Thank you. Candidate Brahms, what do you think should be the best way to ensure funding for the colleges and universities in the Upper Peninsula?
I think there's two areas. I would say from observing some of the expenses that go on, especially I live near NMU. Sometimes there's a little bit spending on some unnecessary activities that could hold costs down for starters, and invest in programs that are useful to build your economy up so you're actually getting a valid education that's worth more than just, let's just say worth more than the paper it's printed on. You know, it's great to go to college, but you should also be learning to use a trade or information that's going to be useful for you for the rest of your life. So I would invest, but let's invest on something that's worthwhile and useful and not just the excuse of being in college for 4 years.
Thank you. Candidate McBroom?
Funding for our colleges and universities is always difficult. Bay College, Gogebic Community College, in particular, face some real hurdles that most of the other community colleges don't face because of the overwhelming amount of state land within the area. Significantly shrinks the tax roll that they're able to draw from when they pass millages. Typically, the legislature has to add a special clause into budget appropriations for the community colleges for Bay and for Gogebic because of that. And that's something that those of us who represent this area have to consistently remind our colleagues downstate to do, or those schools get left behind. Northern and Tech and LSSU here in the UP as our universities do a great job for us, but have special costs that a lot of other places don't have, whether it's plowing snow or getting rid of the snowbanks in June before the freshman orientation starts. You know, it's challenging, and we're very privileged to have these places in the UP, and we need them to continue on, but especially to make sure they're serving the UP economy too, and the investment that we make in them has to be directed towards the fields that the Upper Peninsula needs staffed and populated.
Thank you. We have now come to the final minutes of the candidate forum for the Michigan Senate 38th District. Candidates will be given a 1 minute to make a closing statement. Candidate McBroom, you may begin.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks so much for taking your time to be here and for considering voting for me. It's been an honor and a humbling experience to serve in this capacity. And should I be blessed to have another 4 years, it's going to grow because it'll be all 15 counties of the UP instead of just 12 of them. I want to take a moment, though, just to share one last thought, though, and that's on Prop 3, because you heard another candidate say that, you know, it doesn't do anything except reestablish Roe v. Wade, and that's absolutely, completely untrue. It does way, way more than just reestablish the status quo of Roe v. Wade. It means we can't even pass a law banning coat hanger abortions. That's what this would do. It puts it right into the Constitution, can't do a thing about it, can't require a doctor to be a performer, can't require parental consent for children that are getting care. And born alive or partial birth abortion, there's nothing we can do about any of those things, and it puts it all right in the Constitution. So don't be fooled. It's not reestablishing the status quo. It's way more. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Candidate Brahms, you have the floor for 1 minute, beginning now.
Well, thank you. Like I said, I've spent most of my adult life in the service of others. I was in the military. I work in the public schools among some of the more challenging special education needs. I see my potential role as supporting the people of the Upper Peninsula in Lansing to promote a better economy, a better infrastructure. It's really about the future, making sure our children grow up in a healthy environment where they can progress and have economic opportunities. You know, things don't just happen, you have to work for them. I hope we can find common ground, and I hope people participate in the electoral process. You know, the United States has stood up for well over 200 years, and democracy doesn't exist on its own. We all need to participate, and I will support whoever wins in the end. Thank you.
Thank you. Each of our candidates has now made their closing remarks. Thank you once again for participating in our forum this evening. The League of Women Voters has also provided an online voter's guide, which can be found at vote411.org. Vote411.org is a one-stop shop for election-related information. It provides nonpartisan information to the public. It is already available. A recording of tonight's forum will be available on the Delta County League of Women Voters Facebook page or the City of Escanaba's website YouTube channel. We hope that the audience has found this evening informative and helpful in determining for whom they will vote. Please make your voice heard by voting in the Tuesday, November 8th election. The polls will be open from 7 a.m. until 8 p.m. For those unable to be present at the polls, absentee ballots may be picked up at your local clerk's office. Please call them for more information Absentee voters are encouraged to return their ballots as soon as possible, but every ballot will be counted if received by 8 p.m. on November 8th. If you need additional election information, please call your local clerk's office. Please note that you will need to present a photo ID when voting, or fill out an affidavit stating that you do not have a photo ID. We would like to thank the City of Escanaba for the use of council chambers and broadcasting the program, and thank you to our local media for publicizing tonight's forum, and a special thanks to our audience for participation. Before ending tonight, we, the Delta County League of Women Voters, would also like to remind our viewers that if you find our forums informative and you believe that voter participation is not a spectator sport, we urge you to join us. We are always open to new members. Any interested man or woman can contact us at lwvdeltacounty@yahoo.com. For the American Association of University Women and the Delta County League of Women Voters, who sponsored this evening's forum, I'm Shannon Taylor. Thank you and good night.